Space was silent. An old human warship floated near the ruins of a colony. The ship was scratched, burned, and half dead. Inside, broken lights blinked. Metal groaned like something alive. The crew didn't talk much anymore. The war had been fast. Too fast. First, Earth went dark. Then the outer colonies vanished, one by one. Now, only the ship remained. Inside, the captain stood near the control screen. He looked tired. Gray dust covered his uniform. Behind him, the others sat in silence. The pilot, the scout, the engineer, the gunner. None of them had names now. There was no need. Everyone who cared was gone. A red light blinked. New signal detected, said the computer. The pilot looked up. Another one? The captain nodded once. The scout pressed a button. A voice came through. The speakers. Broken. Weak. Like it was fighting to stay alive. ... We held them. Held the line. No one came. ... We are out of time. ... Please ... Anyone ... Then silence. The scout stared at the speaker. Is it recent? The computer replied, signal is 3 days old. 3 days. The gunner whispered, maybe someone's still alive. The captain didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the map. The signal came from a small colony planet called 7C, not too far. But no one had answered their calls for weeks. The pilot looked at him. Should we go? The captain gave a slow nod. Set course. The ship moved through the black. No stars. No color. Just silence. Inside. The crew got ready. The engineer checked the power. The gunner loaded the last missiles. They didn't have many. The scout watched the outside through a cracked screen. After a long hour, the colony came into view. It was dead. Black smoke floated in the air. Buildings were broken. Fires had burned everything down. No movement. No signs of life. They landed near a broken tower. The wind was soft. Cold. The crew stepped outside. Weapons ready. The ground was covered in white dust. But it wasn't snow, it was ash. Human ash. They walked through the ruins. Everything was quiet. Suddenly the scout raised a hand. Wait, she said. The crew stopped. From behind a pile of metal. Something moved. Everyone pointed their weapons. Out. Came ... A small robot. Human-made. Damaged. One arm missing. It spoke in a soft voice. Emergency mode. Survivors inside. Please follow. They followed the robot through the broken colony. It led them to a bunker, half covered by fallen stone. The engineer pulled the door open. Inside, it was dark. They went down metal steps. The smell of smoke and blood was strong. Inside the bunker, they found bodies. Soldiers, doctors, civilians. All dead, but one wall had something written in dark red. Not paint. Blood. They're not invading. They're cleansing. The scout stepped back. The engineer looked around. What does that mean? The captain spoke for the first time in a while. It means they don't want to take over. They want us gone. All of us. Back on the ship, the crew sat in silence. The pilot whispered, are we really the last? No one answered. Then the lights flickered. The ship shook. An alarm rang. Unidentified presence detected outside the hull. The screen showed something floating near the ship. It was not human. It looked like a shadow with sharp edges. No eyes. No lights. Just darkness. Shaped like a machine. Is it alive? The gunner asked. Doesn't matter. The captain said. It's not friendly. The creature moved. Fast. Boom. The ship was hit. The crew fell to the ground. The gunner fired. Missiles. The scout raised the shield. The pilot tried to steer. The ship away. The creature vanished. Then nothing. The ship floated. Quietly again. Everyone was breathing hard. It was waiting for us. The engineer said. It knew we'd come. The captain looked out the window. Then we give it something to be afraid of. He said, asterisk. The ship floated above the dead colony. Engines silent. Hull still shaking from the last attack. Inside, the crew moved slowly, carefully. No one wanted to speak about what they saw outside the window, about the thing with no shape, no eyes, no face. It had moved like smoke but hit like a hammer. It had left no mark, but the fear it left behind was heavier than metal. They had escaped, barely. The ship was hurt, but not broken. The captain stood at the center of the command room, staring at the screen. The signal they had followed still played, looping on the speakers like a ghost whispering from a grave. The words were always the same. We held them off. We waited. No one came. Please. Anyone. The scout watched the planet below, hands tight on the railing. Something about that message felt wrong. Not just fear or pain. It was the way it ended. Not with screaming. Not with gunfire. Just silence. Like someone had chosen to stop talking. Like someone had accepted what was coming. The captain gave the order. They would go back down. The engineer argued first. The damage to the ship was real. Systems were flickering. If something went wrong, they might not take off again. But the captain said one sentence, and it was enough. If there's a chance someone's alive, we don't leave them behind. The gunner smiled without humor. That's how we got into this. Mess. Always hoping. Always trying. They landed again. Same place. But this time, the wind was gone. The ash was still. It felt like the planet was holding its breath. The scout moved ahead, walking through the broken colony buildings. She saw burn marks on the walls, handprints made of soot, and things half melted that used to be toys. The others followed, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. They found the old bunker again. The blood words were still on the wall. Cleansing. The word echoed in their minds like a drum. The captain ordered the crew to spread out, search everything, find any sign of life or death. The scout took the east wing alone. She walked past storage rooms full of food no one would eat, beds still warm from bodies that no longer breathed, a family photo with eyes scratched out. And then she found the elevator shaft it was open. She called it in. The others arrived fast. The shaft went down deeper than any of them expected. It wasn't on the map. The engineer said maybe it was added later, maybe it was secret. The gunner dropped a glow stick. It fell for a long time. Then it stopped, not on the ground, on something soft. The captain said they go in. One by one, they climbed down the shaft, weapons on their backs, lights on their shoulders. The metal walls were smooth at first. Then they weren't. The marks appeared slowly. Scratches, not from tools, from claws. Then symbols, not human. Not like any known alien. Just dot shapes. Too perfect, too clean. They made the scout feel cold. Even though the air was warm, they reached the bottom. The room was wide, circular, and full of dot bones. Not just human. Alien, too. All mixed together like a storm had thrown bodies in every direction. But there was no smell. No rot, no blood. Only dry remains, stacked neatly along the walls. Like a warning dot in the center of the room stood a machine. It wasn't built by humans, but it wasn't broken. It was active, humming, pulsing with a soft blue light. The engineer stepped closer. He scanned it, then shook his head. It's reading our language. Our systems. It's adapting. The scout asked why it was down here. What was it doing? The captain guessed first. Watching, recording, maybe waiting for something. The engineer found a panel. He pressed one button. The room lit up with projection, a 3D map of the galaxy. Colonies marked in red, then crossed out, one by one. Earth turned black, then the colonies, then the outposts, then the outer moons, all gone. Only one red dot left, their ship. The machine had been tracking them. It had marked everything else as destroyed. The last red dot blinked slowly. Then it turned. The yellow dot target locked. They all stepped back. The machine's hum grew louder. The captain shouted. Back to the ship. They ran. Climbing the shaft felt slower than ever. The metal groaned. The symbols on the walls glowed now, bright and angry. The engineer's hand slipped. The gunner caught him just in time. They reached the surface. The sky was dark. Too dark. The clouds were gone. The stars were gone. Only one shape above them. A shadow stretching from horizon to horizon, silent, watching. The captain gave the order. No hesitation. Get to the ship. Now dot they sprinted, dot the ground shook, dot the colony behind them began to fall into itself. Buildings cracked, broke, then vanished like dust in wind. The machine had done something, activated something. Inside the ship, systems came online. The pilot screamed for lift. The engines fought the weight of fear. The moment the ship rose, the colony exploded behind them, not with fire, but with light. Pure white, then gone, erased dot from orbit. The crew watched the planet become clean, empty. No ruins, no smoke, nothing left dot as if no one had ever lived. There it all, dot, and then the ship received a message. Not a voice, not words, just a single image. A drawing, a child's hand holding another. Both turning to ash dot, they were not the first to see this, and they would not be the last. The stars were quiet again, but no one on the ship trusted the silence anymore. The crew didn't speak much after they escaped the last colony. What they had seen, it wasn't war. It wasn't destruction, it was something worse, something final. The enemy hadn't just killed. It had erased every memory dot every sound. Every trace dot gone dot the captain sat alone in the control room. The screen showed only empty space ahead. The blinking red dot, their ship, was now the only known human signal left in the galaxy. The scout stood beside him. Her voice was low, careful. She said she picked up something strange. A signal, not human, not from the enemy either. Faint, like someone whispering from far away. But it was not calling for help, it was calling for silence. The crew gathered. The pilot tracked the source. It was coming from a debris field, pieces of a shattered ship floating in space. The scanner showed twisted metal, broken engines, and an energy core still active. The gunner frowned. No movement, no power signatures, no weapons aimed. It looked dot. The captain made the call. They would investigate. The ship moved carefully through the wreckage. Parts of the broken vessel floated like dead fish in black water. Big chunks were covered in strange patterns like the surface. Had melted and then frozen again. No one could tell who had built the ship. It wasn't human, but it wasn't like the enemy either. They docked with the largest piece. The airlock hissed open. Inside, the smell hit first. Not death, not metal, but something else. Something like burned plastic mixed with flowers. The crew stepped into the dark hallway. Their lights cut through the blackness, but shadows moved like they didn't care about light anymore. The walls were smooth, silver, and cold to the touch. The scout touched one and pulled her hand back fast. The surface had a pulse, like it was breathing. They moved deeper. Signs of battle were everywhere. Scorch marks, deep cuts in the walls, exploded doors. But no bodies, not even blood. Just silence. The engineer found a terminal. The screen was broken, but wires still hummed underneath. He tapped into it. The system responded in a soft tone. Not words, just tones, like it was singing to itself. The engineer frowned. It wasn't warning them. It was warning itself. Further in, they reached a large chamber. The room was full of glass tubes, each one cracked open. Inside were broken pieces of armor, metal limbs, eyes that looked human but were not. The gunner whispered that this ship had carried soldiers. But not like theirs. These were not born. They were built. A sound echoed through the chamber. A soft scraping. Not close. Not far. Just that moving. The crew froze. The scout raised her weapon. Her light moved across the floor. Something crawled past. Small, fast, metallic. A drone, round, spiked, dragging something behind it. A broken leg. They followed it. It led them to the ship's core. A large circular room, glowing faint blue. In the center, a machine hanging from the ceiling, like a spider made of glass. Below it, a single figure lay on the floor. Alive. Barely. The figure moved. Its skin was pale, stretched thin over metal bones. Its face had no mouth, but its eyes opened. One human eye, one red. The captain stepped forward. He lowered his weapon. The figure looked at him, and, without speaking, its thoughts entered the captain's mind. not words. Just feelings, pain, fear, running, they were running from the same thing. The figure raised its hand slowly and pointed to a panel. The engineer activated it. A projection filled the room. Stars, planets, systems. One by one, each turned. Red, then black. But this time, a different path appeared. A trail of green lights through uncharted space. The figure showed them where it had come from. A system beyond known space. A hidden place. A vault. A shelter. Built not by humans. Not by them. By those who had fought the enemy long ago. And lost. But they had left something behind. A key. A signal. A plan. The figure closed its eyes. Its body went still. Then its chest opened slowly, like a flower unfolding. Inside, a data core. Still active. The engineer removed it. The moment he did, the ship shook. The walls began to hum. Lights turned red. The machine in the ceiling screamed. A sound that pierced bone. The captain shouted for retreat. They ran, dodging falling debris. The broken drones woke and screamed as they moved, their bodies twisting, crawling, trying to follow. The crew made it back to their ship. The airlock closed. Engines fired. The enemy ship behind them folded in on itself, like it had never existed back. On board, the engineer plugged in the core. The screen flickered. Then a voice spoke. It was not human. Not alien. Not machine. It said only one thing. They're not coming for your planets. They're coming for your minds. And once they take your thoughts, you become one of them. The screen showed a face. No eyes. No mouth. Just silence. Then the voice returned. You are not the last. But soon you will be asterisk. The data core pulsed quietly, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to anything alive. It sat inside a locked chamber aboard the human ship, protected by thick steel, guarded by sensors that scanned for movement, sound, thought. The crew didn't know if it could think or if it was waiting for something. But every time someone walked past it, they felt cold. The scout said she had dreams now. Not hers. Someone else's. Eyes looking through her eyes. A child crying in a metal room. A voice whispering numbers that didn't stop. When she woke up, the voice would still be there for a few seconds. And then nothing. Silence. As if it had hidden again. The captain stayed awake for 3 days, reading the data inside the core. It wasn't just a map. It was a warning. Long ago, someone had found the enemy before humans ever knew it existed. The data spoke of something older than time. Something that didn't just kill. It took meaning. It took memory. Whole civilizations were destroyed, not by bombs, but by forgetting who they were. Their names, their language, their purpose, all gone. Erased. Replaced by silence. But there had been a signal, a beacon, deep in a sector no human ship had ever entered. The data showed a small star, faint and dying. Around it, a single station. Not enemy, not human, something else. The last attempt to fight back. A weapon, maybe, or a trap. The crew gathered. The scout said it could be hope. The gunner said it smelled like bait. The engineer said the signal had a pattern. It was repeating something over and over. One word. Remember. The captain said they had no choice. The enemy was tracking them now. Slowly. Carefully. Not rushing. Just following. It didn't need to chase. It already knew how the story would end. So they went. Days passed. The stars outside grew dimmer. Less familiar. The ship began to change. Not its shape, but its memory. Rooms would be in the wrong place. Doors led to empty halls that hadn't been there before. Once, the engineer walked into the engine room and found a version of himself, sitting, silent, staring at the wall. When he blinked, it was gone. The pilot reported something worse. The ship's logs were changing. Messages they'd recorded days ago were now missing, replaced by recordings they never made, laughter, screams, static, and one voice that spoke in a perfect copy of the captain's tone. We have already lost. The captain ordered full system scans. The AI found nothing. But it kept asking a question. Where are we? Again and again. Where are we? The signal grew stronger. The station was close now. The ship slowed, drifting into orbit. It was enormous. Old covered in dust and shadows. No lights, no weapons. Just metal arms stretched toward the dead. Star like it was praying, they docked. The airlock opened without them touching it inside. The station was empty. No bodies. No bones. Only silence. But the silence was loud, heavy, alive. As they moved deeper. The walls lit up behind them, not before, only after. As if the station was watching, waiting, learning their shape. There. Steps. They found the first chamber. A circle of chairs. Each one held a suit. Inside. Each suit was a person. Not dead. Not breathing. Frozen in time. The scout touched one helmet and gasped. The face inside was hers. Exactly hers. Same scar. Same hair. Same look of fear. She stepped back. The others looked. Each suit now showed someone from their crew. Perfect copies. The engineer scanned one. It wasn't a body. It was a memory. The suit was holding a moment, a piece of who they were, like a museum trying to keep a piece of fire without, letting it burn. Then the room changed. The walls melted, and they weren't on the station anymore. They were home. Earth. But not the real Earth. A version made from memory. The air smelled of grass and oceans, and food from kitchens long gone. Families stood on the streets, waving. Friends who had died were alive again. Children who had never been born laughed and ran. And each crew member stood alone in their own perfect version of a world that could have been or had been or never was. The captain saw his home, untouched by war. The gunner saw her brother, holding out a hand. The engineer saw a sky full of stars, each one lit by peace. They all began to walk forward. The scout was the only one who didn't move. She heard a sound, not from her dream world, but from the real one. A ticking, a countdown. She screamed, but no one heard. She ran through her memory, tearing down walls, pushing past the voices, until she found the captain. She slapped him. He blinked. And the world around them cracked. It wasn't real. The suits. They weren't to protect. They were traps, holding minds, keeping them still, feeding them perfect lies. While something took the body, she dragged the others out, one by one. Some cried. Some screamed. Some begged to go back. The engineer's hands were shaking. He said he saw his daughter again. She never existed, but he remembered her face. He still remembered. The station's core was deep below. They moved fast now. No more illusions. No more tricks. At the center, they found the machine. Not enemy. Not human. Built by a species long lost. The last gift. Memory bomb. Designed to be set off in the path of the enemy. One explosion. Not fire. Not light. But memory. So strong it couldn't be erased. A truth so sharp it would tear through the silence. The captain looked at the crew. If they used it, they would be marked. The enemy would come. All of it. No. More hiding. But the scout said something that stayed in every mind. What good is surviving if no one remembers who we are? The captain placed his hand on the core. The station shook. The signal went out. And far, far away, the silence turned and listened and screamed. Asterisk. The memory bomb had been triggered. At first, nothing happened. The station was quiet again. The ship floated in orbit. The crew stood waiting, eyes on the scanners, hands on weapons. But the sky looked the same, empty, still, silent, until it wasn't. Dead star above them flickered. Once, then turned red. Not a glow, not light, just color. Bleeding across space like ink in water. And from that color came the sound, not through the air, not through the ship, but inside their minds. A scream, not human. Not words, just emotion. Pure rage. Pain that was older than planets. Hunger that had waited too long. The memory bomb had worked, not as a weapon, but as a beacon. It had forced the enemy to feel. And the enemy had remembered what it hated. Humanity. It Remembered Earth dot, it remembered resistance dot, and now it was coming. The crew felt the pressure before they saw the ship. Space itself seemed to bend. Stars vanished. Lights dimmed. And then it arrived. Not a ship. Not even a shape. Just an absence. Like space had been carved open and something was leaking through. The pilot shouted. Systems failed one by one. The controls stopped responding. The station's orbit was collapsing. The enemy was pulling it in, not with gravity, but with memory. It wanted to erase this place, crush the last whisper of what had been done here. The captain gave the order evacuate, but it was too late. The enemy had touched their ship. The lights turned. Off. The AI fell silent, then spoke again, with its voice. Not. The AI's voice. The enemy's calm, icy, empty. I know you now. The screen turned black, then lit up again, with their faces, one by one. The scout, the gunner. The captain, each shown alone. Dying in different ways. Crushed. Burned. Erased. But always alone. Always forgotten. It wasn't trying to kill them. It was trying to break them. Inside the station. The crew made a final decision. They couldn't run. They couldn't hide. But maybe, just maybe, they could send a message. Not to Earth. Not to the colonies, to whoever might come after. Someone had done this before. The memory bomb hadn't been meant to save. It had been meant to remind so they set the station to. Transmit everything, the logs, the enemy, the bomb. Their fear, their thoughts, their names. The captain made the call. One last broadcast, and then they would send the station into the enemy's mouth. It would be swallowed, but not forgotten. They hoped. The scout ran to the core room. The transmission had to be done manually. The gunner followed. The rest went back to the ship, working to restart power, trying to break the grip of the thing outside. The enemy was already inside. Not fully, but leaking. The air grew colder. The walls turned smooth, like they were forgetting what shape they had been. The engineers saw the control panel melt in front of his eyes. Not physically, but in his memory. He couldn't remember what buttons to press. He screamed. The pilot didn't answer. She was looking at a photo on the dashboard, her own face, crossed out in black ink. The captain grabbed her, shook her. She blinked. The photo was gone. It had never been there, but she had seen it. The enemy wasn't attacking from outside. It was infecting thought. The scout reached the core room. The signal transmitter was cold, old, nearly broken. She began uploading everything. The gunner kept watch, but her hands were shaking. Her weapon was heavy. Her mind kept replaying something. Her brother's voice. But her brother had died 5 years ago. She had buried him herself. Why was he whispering to her now? Come home, he said. You don't have to fight anymore. The gunner turned around. No. One was there. Just the wall. And her shadow, which wasn't moving like she was. The scout finished the upload. The system lit green. The transmission began. It would take 10 seconds. That's all. The captain yelled through comms. The ship was loose. They had one shot to escape. Engines were barely online. The station was shaking, cracking. The enemy was pulling harder now, not with force. With memory. Every crew member began forgetting little things. The engineer forgot how old he was. The pilot forgot what her parents looked like. The captain forgot the name of the mission. But they remembered one thing. Each other. The scout and gunner ran. The enemy was already in the halls now. Not moving, just being. Shadow without light, a shape without edges. The ship's door opened. The last two jumped. Inside, engines fired. The station behind them folded like paper. Turning inside out, the enemy swallowed it whole, but not before the signal burst out. Loud, bright, sharp. Not just the transmission. A memory pushed into space with everything they had. The ship flew in silence. No one spoke. They had escaped, for now. But it wasn't over, because something happened next. Far away, in a dead part of the galaxy. Another signal blinked to life. A small ship answered. Not human. Not enemy. Something in between. Something that had been waiting, something listening. The message had reached someone, and now they remembered humanity. Asterisk. The ship drifted through empty space. Engines cold, lights dim, oxygen low. They had escaped the station, but the crew hadn't won. Not yet. Maybe not at all. The transmission had been sent. That was all they had done. The enemy had swallowed the station like a spider folding silk. It didn't even chase them. It didn't need to dot, it had already touched them. The pilot sat at the console, eyes open, but not blinking. The captain asked her something 3 times. She didn't respond. When he touched her shoulder, she jumped like waking from a nightmare. She didn't remember falling asleep. The scout wrote everything down now. Names, tasks, memories, faces, just in case. Just to hold on to something real. The enemy's touch wasn't like a wound. It was like fog. Quiet, slow, but always coming closer. The gunner had stopped sleeping every time she closed her eyes. She dreamed of her own hands reaching out to choke her. The ship's I didn't speak anymore. Not in words, just sounds, soft ones. Humming, breathing, crying. Once it whispered a word. Soon. No one told it to stop because they didn't know if it was still their or if it had become one of them. The message had gone out, but they didn't know where, or if it mattered. But 3 days later, a sound came through the static. Not the enemy. Not human. Something else. A code. Simple. Short, but not random. The engineer cracked. It said, if you're still thinking, follow. And then gave coordinates. Far. Beyond any chart, a black system. No name. No light. The crew argued it could be another trap, another illusion. But what other choice did they have? Stay still, and the enemy would reach them. Run. And they'd forgotten. So they went. And space began to change. Not physically, not on a scanner, but in their minds. The stars ahead looked wrong. They moved too fast, then too slow. Some blinked out completely. The pilot checked the instruments. Everything was working, except it wasn't. The captain had to remind her where the controls were. She had flown the ship for years, but forgot which buttons to press. The crew took turns flying. Everyone was forgetting something now. But no one talked about it, because the enemy heard memory, and the more you remembered, the louder you were to it. They reached the system in silence. No planets. No moons. Just darkness. And then a light. One. Small. Flickering. The ship moved toward it. A structure appeared. A single ring, floating alone in black space. Spinning. Old. Not alien. Not human. Something else. Like it had been made from thoughts. The AI turned on again. But it wasn't. The same. Its voice sounded like someone they knew, but none of them could say who. It said, "This is the last door." The ring opened. The ship was pulled inside. No choice. No fight. The screen went black, then white, and suddenly they weren't in space anymore. They were somewhere. A room, white walls. No doors. No sky. No stars. Just them. The crew stood in a circle, and someone else stood in the center. Child. Eyes black. Skin glowing like static. It looked at them. Spoke. Not with sound. With memory. Each of them heard their own past. The gunner heard her brother's final words. The pilot saw her mother's last smile. Engineer felt the first time. He had built something and it worked. The captain saw Earth burning in the last hour before the colonies fell. The scout heard only one word: run. The child looked up at her. You can still fight. It said. Then everything went dark. When they woke, they were back on the ship, but something had changed. Each crew member had something new in their minds. A weapon. Not made of metal. Not made of light. Made of truth. A memory so strong it couldn't be erased. The child had given it to them. One last gift from something older. Then both humans and enemies. They looked ahead. On the horizon, the source of the enemy. A dead star. A hollow world. Birthplace of the silence. The captain looked at the others. We end it now. And no one disagreed. The scout loaded the last memory. Round into the core. The gunner locked the ship's path. The pilot took the controls. The AI whispered one last word. Remember. Then the ship flew into the dark, toward the final fight, where the silence had begun. And where it would learn what happens when memory fights back. The ship moved toward the dead star. Nothing else existed around it. No planets, no light, no warmth. Just black gravity pulling everything inward. Not like a sun, not like a hole. Like a mouth, wide open, waiting to swallow the last sound in. The universe. The crew didn't speak. Words felt dangerous now. Even thoughts felt too loud. They had one memory left to use. A gift from the child, born outside time, left behind by those who had tried before. A memory so strong. It burned, but it had no shape yet. It needed something. It needed them. The engineer was the first to break. He held his head, sweating, shaking. He said his name, but couldn't hear it. He said the captain's name, but it sounded like static. He grabbed the wall, trying to stay upright. Then he said something else. He said, "I was never here, was I?" And for a second, he wasn't. The lights flickered, and in that blink, he disappeared. But the scout grabbed his wrist, hard. Her grip bled. And with her scream, he snapped back. Engineer collapsed, gasping. Still, their still real. Barely. The enemy was pulling faster now. Not the ship. Them. Their existence. Their place in history. The gunner pointed out the window. She said, "Look." A shape. At first it looked like a planet, then like a ship. Then like something crawling along space itself. It wasn't a thing. It was a feeling. The enemy. Closer than ever, watching them, learning them, trying to erase them. Before they reached its heart, the scout moved fast. She loaded the memory weapon into the core. The memory was still blank, still waiting. The captain placed his hand on the glass. "I know what it needs," he said. The others stared. He smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was memory. He began to speak. Simple words. Stories. Of old battles. Of Earth. Of when they thought they'd lose, but didn't. Of the first time they saw the stars. Of names no one else remembered. He told them about a dog he had long ago that died in his arms. About his sister, who gave him her last food when they were starving. He told them about silence. And why it was the enemy, because silence means no one remembers. And that's worse than death. And with every word, the memory core grew brighter. It began to glow. Red. Then white. Then gold. The others stepped forward. The scout spoke of her mother. Refugee. A fighter. A woman who told her, "Even stars die, but they shine first." The gunner spoke of a soldier who once carried her out of a burning station and then vanished. Never named, never honored. The engineer remembered the first machine he made with his bare hands, and the pride he felt when it worked. And the pilot? She said nothing. She just reached into her pocket, pulled out a piece of paper. Folded. Old. She unfolded it. The drawing. A house. 3 stick figures. Sun. One word written below. Home. She placed it against the core, and it turned black. Then exploded. In color, the memory was ready. The weapon was real now. But to fire it, someone had to stay. To aim it. To face the silence directly. The captain didn't wait. He walked to the launch chair. Locked himself in. No tears. No goodbye. Just a look at each of them. One last look. And a smile. Go. The ship detached. The others launched away. In the escape pod. The captain stayed. Alone. Inside. The mouth of the enemy. The enemy reached in, clawed at his thoughts, tried to pull apart his memories. He felt himself slipping, but he held on. To every name. Every story. Every face. And then he fired. The memory exploded. It didn't make a sound. It made truth. Light burst across space. But it wasn't light like fire. It was the memory of Earth. The memory of love. The memory of pain. Of laughter. Of fear. Of resistance. Of standing up when you're supposed to fall. The silence screamed. Not in pain. And fear. Because it couldn't erase this. It couldn't swallow it. It was too strong. Too human. The memory burned into the stars. The enemy recoiled. Tore apart. Vanished. And for the first time in years, space was truly silent. The escape pod drifted. The scout watched the scanner. Nothing followed Dot, no. Sign of the captain. But the signal he sent? Still playing Dot over and over. Into the dark. For anyone to hear. For anyone who needed to know. We lived. We fought Dot. We remembered Dot the gunner whispered. Just us. And the pilot nodded Dot, tears in her eyes. Because just us had been enough Dot in somewhere far away. A world lit a small fire and began to remember the name of humanity.